Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name's Alex. This is Cage Talk. And for today, we have a guest who's a retired mixed martial artist. He was actually a boxer before a mixed martial artist. Was a boxer, did kickboxing for MMA. He was in Bellator. He was in MFC, Cage Fury Fighting Championships. He was also the contestant of The Ultimate Fighter. We have MMA veteran Marcus, the Irish hand grenade Davis. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good, man. How's everything? How's everything with you?
Good. I mean, even through this whole,
COVID
pandemic
situation.
thing going on, this thing that's, you know, wiping out more people at age 78, which is the median age for the United States to begin with.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not trying to make light of that, but, to shut down an entire country and everything for something that's affecting, less people than heart disease,
yep,
less people than car accidents, you know what I mean, and all
yes,
this.
sir.
And but anyways, other than that, originally, um things got I got pretty nervous because financially you don't know what's going to happen,
Definitely.
and told my wife we had been uh saving money. We'd been putting money aside to buy a plot of land that we were looking at, and we were also I had to buy, I promised her a new car. So we were putting all that money away. And then
Okay.
right when we were about to pull the trigger on that, this thing hit. And so it looked like I was like, listen, we're not going to be able to do any of this. We're going to have to keep that money there. So we have a buffer uh, just in case, this
Anything
gets really
happens.
bad. And then, like, literally the first week of it, my hours were cut and all this stuff. And I was like, oh no. And by the time I got, I don't want to say a month, it was less than a month, maybe 3 weeks into the whole COVID thing.
Okay.
Um, I had the, I do well for what I do. I ended up making a little over 2 grand more
Oh,
in
okay.
that amount of time than I had ever previously. And then it just consistently just kind of stayed like that. Now it's gone down and up a little bit, but never back to where it was before. So it was real weird that, you know, that I ended up benefiting kind of through this, which you know, I certainly didn't want to. I didn't, that's not what my thought was, that that's
Exactly.
what would happen. But I've just been really busy. That's all that means. So I've been busy, and, thank the invisible man or whatever it is that's up there for for making sure that I didn't go without, like, so many people. You've seen other small businesses and stuff going
Take
belly
a
up
hit.
because of
Yep.
restrictions. So,
Yeah, definitely.
you know, but yeah, just been busy, and that's a good thing.
No, definitely. It's always good to keep busy, especially my job. I work for DFW. I work in TSA. So they were doing where it was like 1 week on, 1 week off. So basically, you work the whole week, then you're off the whole week. And it was kind of like that for about maybe like 2 months. And it was nice because I got to stay home with my kid and stuff, and I was working out. But then once it went back to normal work, I started gaining weight more. I started eating bad shit, and so it's a weird time. It's a definitely a weird time, and this is how the kind of like my podcast started, because I think everyone started doing kind of the podcast like, hey, why not? I mean, everyone's home. Let's
Right.
talk some shit, and especially
Yeah.
now I've talked to so many fighters, which has been really, really cool, just because I've watched you when I was little, fighting in the UFC and stuff. I watched like a Chris Lytle, Marcus Davis, Chris Lieben, like these guys I've grown up watching, and it's cool just to have them on the show and even to talk about their experiences now and even back then. So it's a nice little platform just to get some fresh air, from everything that's outside and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I think that you're right. I mean, I have seen more, YouTube kind of channels and whatever,
Yeah.
and throw it on top of an election and throw it on with everything else kind of going on in the world. There, there's just so much crazy crap going on, like, and
Exactly.
it's hard to figure out what's real and what's not, because I think out of any time ever in history, because information is so easy to share, that it's harder for whether it's a government or the power of that used to be the
Mhm.
power that the mainstream media had previously, because there was no other place to get your information,
Exactly.
to sell you what they wanted you to believe.
Hmm.
That doesn't exist now.
Nope.
Now everybody is interested in
Everyone
telling
has
either
their own
their
opinion.
own.
Yep.
Right. So
Exactly.
a lot of stuff that when I don't want to get too deep into this because we'll go on a whole nother tangent, but I one of the main things I studied when I got um, done with fighting and everything. So I did it while I was fighting, but uh, I would say about 2009,
Hmm.
uh, I really got busy studying it, and then when I retired, from about 2014 until now, I've the last 6 years, I've really deeply been reading as many scientific studies and medical journals and everything having to do with the brain and how the brain works. Because back in 2008 was about the time that they had realized everything they thought how the brain worked, they were wrong. Not everything, but a lot of it.
Hmm.
And so, and then I started reading more on like how cognitive dissonance and and cognitive bias and all this stuff, how this all plays a role in how your thalamus, in your limbic system, its job is to filter and regulate, and its main thing is it always wants to prove to you what your belief system is correct. So it'll always try to make sure that it searches out information that just proves your bias.
It's like a
So,
defensive mechanism almost, like just
yeah,
kind of
right.
shoots out like that.
Yeah, exactly. To be able to keep you to survive, because that's the oldest part of our brain, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So as you start to go back, we become more like animals, right? We have that frontal lobe, that front cortex, which is our higher thinking brain. But as we move back here and start to get to the back and the base of the skull,
Hmm.
where the brain stem is, and that brain stem is oftenly referred to as the reptilian brain, right? So the brain stem, off that, where your pons, your medulla, and then you come out, and above that is your amygdala, and then your hippocampus, and then off here to the side would be where your thalamus is. That's all that grouping is part of that limbic system, and that's where the caveman like side of everybody, right? And
Yep.
all of that exists in all other lower forms. Like when I say lower forms, I mean in the animal kingdom. So like all of your non like voluntary actions happen from there. So like your brain stem and your pons medulla and all that off there,
Hmm.
or like sneezing and blinking, and you don't go, oh man, I almost forgot to make my heart beat,
Yeah, it just automatically.
right.
Yeah.
So all that happens there, and so does your survival, like your flinch, right? So when you
Hmm.
see something, you go whoa, right,
Yep.
and you just kind of like, and originally, like you might flinch, something goes past your eye, you go like this,
Definitely.
and because you makes an association, your brain wants to keep you safe, and it says, pull your head away from danger, throw your hands up to block anything from hitting your computer and smashing it. So
Hmm.
you kind of throw your hands up, and you go, maybe your brain says it's a bee or something, I don't know, whatever. And then all of a sudden you look and you go, oh, wait, no, it's just a butterfly. And it's because it takes 1/10 of a second for your brain to gather information from what it sees visually, and then let you know that it can threat discriminate, right? It can say, okay, wait, that wasn't something scary, it's this. So
Hmm.
I really got into all that, and started like learning how to like both make it so that to make better defensive choices,
Okay.
and then be able to weaponize it at the same time. So be able to take what's already inside you
Mm-hmm.
and see if you could mold that through like neuroplasticity
Okay.
and turn it into like a weapon rather than this being what everybody's, pull head away from danger, throw hands up,
The
protect
first
myself,
reaction.
but get more into this, like that kind of phase.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that, which also led me down those rabbit holes of, the cognitive dissonance, and then starting to be like some kind of like, you know, uh, TV version of a psychiatrist, and be able to say, you know, put diagnoses out there that this guy's just batshit crazy, you know what I mean, or whatever. But
Well, I mean, you could, I mean, like you said, that rabbit hole, man. I mean, you could, there's all sorts of information out there about the brain. I mean, the brain, the human mind is crazy, man. I mean, you could
yeah,
dive really deep into that. And I think it's really interesting. You know, the more we learn about ourselves, I think the better we are in the future. It's just, you're going to have to eventually dive into those rabbit holes, like you said, to eventually come out with the results, right? I mean, that's how
yeah,
it is. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that that's some deep thinking, man. That's a lot of how many years you did that?
So yeah, I started studying it in 2008, and the reason why was my friends from boxing. So I started pro boxing in '95.
Yep.
So by then, when I went to go see my friends, which would be 13, 12, 13 years later, and they had all been actively fighting, and then they were retiring, so they were now in 35 or whatever they were,
Hmm.
and they were retired. They all had brain damage. Like all of them had CTE. They all had you know TBI. So they all had issues, um, and so it scared me. So I got a little scared, and I knew that I had taken thousands of punches. So I started boxing in maybe 1985, I think. So I
Okay.
started doing martial arts first in 1983. No, 1982.
Okay.
I started doing martial arts, and then I started boxing by 1985, amateur. Um, so knowing that, and then doing, being a professional fighter up at that point, um, to I guess that would have been about 15 years, or close to 15 years fighting pro. Right, 13 years
How old
fighting
were you when
pro.
your first amateur boxing fight?
My first amateur match, I think, was 1980. Let me think. So in 1988, I was a freshman in high school, so it was before that.
Oh
So it would
wow.
have been probably 87.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think I started boxing, like being trained to
Gotcha.
box, in 1985. And I would have done that first if there had been boxing available where I was at, but there wasn't.
Hmm.
So that's why I started in traditional martial arts. I started in Okinawan karate,
Okay.
uh, and I did a little of what's called uchiru back then,
Wow.
and then I ended up doing Muda Kwan Taekwondo for a couple of years, and I did the Junior Olympics and all that stuff as a kid, doing that. And then I started boxing. I just fell in love with boxing and just didn't want to do anything having to do with karate or anything like that, because in my head, boxing was such a superior thing, because after I did boxing for like just a couple of years and I had been in there and really learned stuff, I went back to those karate places and
Mhm.
sparred with the guys and I was just destroying them. So it went from, these kids that went to school with or growing up with, that were all running around with black belts tied around their waist,
Yeah.
and all I had was an extra 2 years or a year of just boxing in there with men,
Mhm.
and then went back there and just the first couple of punches you hit these guys with, they were out, they were just quitting, because they weren't doing real full contact, they weren't doing that kind of stuff, and even if they were, it certainly didn't back then involve, the striking of the hands as well as it is, and it has changed now. I'm sure, I'm sure there's a lot of traditional martial arts schools that are adopting more of a boxing style with their hands,
Yeah.
and staying with their kicks. So I think through the evolution of fighting, we went from a time of when it first started. That was the time of the grappler. It was because there was so much unknown about this Gracie Jiu-Jitsu that, in particular, I'm going to say that because that was made for a smaller man to be able to defend themselves, because the
Definitely.
Gracies knew themselves as smaller people. They weren't big guys. And the ability to be mobile on the ground, which was never thought of really before until them. So being able to be on the ground and move your hips, get off center line, and to attack in some certain logical patterns, to create the ability to get outside of a position of like the elbow or the knee. Whereas if you get to the outside of an elbow or knee and you control that, it's impossible to turn in that way. So
Definitely.
if I put my hand on your elbow and hold, you can't turn towards me because there's an elbow in the way. So being able to do an arm drag now, right, which is that, and take somebody's back, or put your hooks in and all of that stuff, uh, and then when the wrestlers figured that out and said, well, wait a minute, all I got to do is kind of follow their hips and not let them get on the outside and kind of do this. Then you saw
Good.
guys like, Mark Kerr, Mark Coleman, uh, the Smash Machine there. That's Mark Kerr. Mark Coleman, Dan Severin. You just started to see these wrestlers come out and they started to dominate. And then you saw these strikers go, okay, wait a minute. I got to follow those hips. I got to sprawl, and I got to do this thing called a wizard. I got to do. Then
Yep.
they started to learn. Then you start to see Mirko Kokop and Vanderlei Silva and even what was his name?
Mark
that
Hunt.
ended up. No, Mark Hunt definitely came along, but even before there, the guy that ended up kicking Coleman in the face and knocked him. Oh, Petey Williams.
Oh, Pete Williams. Yeah.
Way back,
Oh,
right? So
definitely.
who just had decent enough takedown defense and
Just
good
to keep
kickbox.
him off.
Yeah, and then was able to knock him out. And
Yep.
so, like, you started to see the vulnerabilities, and I think that then at that time it was really like whoever on their better day was going to win that fight, because right, because people knew enough of what the other thing needed to do in order to win the fight, to capitalize.
Absolutely.
So that we went from the time of the grappler to time of the striker, uh, and Anderson Silva and all these other guys come out of that. And then now I think we're at the time of the athlete. So now it's been all these guys that are, kicking butt, could play any sport they wanted to, and they've chose fighting, right? So John Jones has a bunch of brothers that play football,
Yep.
professional football, and he's an athlete, Mighty Mouse, probably one of the best athletes out there, period. And so these guys have decided to embrace this, and they just have better fast twitch. They have better aerobic energy, and they have better dexterity, and therefore complex and fine motor skills. So they're able to outperform most other people because they're just better athletes.
Yep.
We're coming around a time where you're going to see another evolution, and things will start changing a little bit, where because you can't, if you can't throw a punch faster, stronger, and better than somebody else, there's got to be another way around it. And I think you're going to see that at some point too. At least, my brain tells me we're going to see that because there's got to be another level to this that takes you out of just athleticism. So
Yeah. Now, is it how long is that period where that change from like grappling, like you said, from grappling they started figuring out and then it became wrestling, from wrestling to stand up? Is there like a time
yeah,
frame or something like that? Do you kind of notice, or is it kind of like?
yeah, for it to transfer over,
Mhm.
uh, the jujitsu thing didn't last as long as everybody thought it was going to, because to be just pure jujitsu, which is what it was at that time. As soon as we got about 4 to 5 years after that UFC, there were no more Gracie named champions. It had passed over to a bunch of wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
So, so when we got, so 1993 was the first UFC. So when we got to about 97 and 98 was where you started to see all these big wrestling names, right? Even Randy Couture and
Randy Couture. You had Kendall Randleman.
all these other people that had just come from the wrestling started to Matt Hughes, right? Matt Hughes. All these guys were all champs in all these different divisions. And then, and then they stayed viable for quite a while. But by the time, I would say about 2005 or about 2005 or 2007 at the latest, it started to be handed more over to the strikers. So that was like when my time when I first got in and I did the Ultimate Fighter was 2005. Yeah. And then after I got in Ultimate Fighter and I was there for a little bit, then Anderson Silva came in.
Yep.
And so then he started to really dominate in the UFC. Obviously, not a wrestler to be shown, like when he fought Chael Sonnen, he was getting dominated wrestling.
Yeah.
But still was able to pull out the fight. And so, that's when I think that you started to see that switch over. And, Pride, you had the strikers winning a little bit earlier, but I think that has to do with the fact that they did it in a ring, not in a cage. So a cage, right, is a solid surface where you can push somebody against and then take them down.
Yes,
where the ropes, you're able to bounce your hips out of it, stick easier. So there were some wrestlers that had success over there in the very beginning, but after that, more of your guys like Fedor wasn't really a wrestler. He was more of definitely a striker / sambo guy, which is more. You wouldn't say that that's like wrestling. I think you would lean it more towards a jiu-jitsu kind of thing, where he won by armbar a couple of times, but I think that might be why is because of the ring. And then a lot of those guys that came over to the UFC didn't do so well because I think adopting into the cage changes everything. So,
gotcha.
It's part of like, if you look at a breakdown of war, so I'm a nerd when it comes to anything to do with warfare and stuff. So I read all these old books on strategy and tactics and everything. So that's what's called the OODA loop, which was actually designed by a fighter pilot many years ago. And the OODA stands for observation, orientation, decision making, and then you act upon that decision. So, and that's what happens in a fight. So one of the main things, right after you observe what's happening, then your next part of that is going to be your orientation, like where's the fight taking place. So certain guys are going to have an advantage in a ring, and certain guys are going to have an advantage in a cage. Just like if I've got good footwork and I'm fighting someone and we're moving around on whatever, us in snow and on slippery, something happens, or if I was to throw a hard punch or a kick, I could slip. So all these different unknown factors that people don't look at sometimes, like, okay, wait a minute, it's happening here, it's not happening there. And even sometimes, having to fight overseas, like that's a orientational, even though you're not yet fighting,
All right.
Oh,
Sorry.
I think I got you.
Yeah. My bad. All right. We're back. Sorry about that. It was the
I know
internet.
something happened.
But go ahead. Sorry about that, Mr. Davidson.
All right.
It was just all right. You were talking about slipping the elbow.
No, I don't even. Oh, slip it on the ice. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I believe
I think
so.
I would say slip it on the ice, right? So if you were to fight on the ice, you slip on the ice, and right, then that's something that's unknown to some when they don't think about it or look at it. But that's something like I look at a lot because outside of training fighters and stuff here in North Carolina, I get pulled. I was training 8 of the police department, so I was traveling and doing some stuff like that. And then I started working and doing stuff with what's called the NCTOA, which is the North Carolina Tactical Office Association. So it's the SWAT teams all belong to that.
Oh, it's
So I would
perfect
go in,
for what you do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would go in and I, do things on like higher level versions of like handcuffing techniques, and then controlled force on the ground, and then doing stuff like weapon retention, and also I put together a pretty good uh, uh, I want to not system like a martial arts system, but a system to follow like on a patrol. Like if you pull somebody over, the steps you should take to have a successful patrol stop and you be safe, but also, uh, the person in the car
Definitely.
be safe too. And that, if they are a bad guy, you're not giving them the, the option to have what number one thing in strategy, what you want is initiative. So he who has initiative, he who goes first, has the greater chance
The
of
upper hand.
winning, right? So right is always going to have the upper hand. So the first part in strategy is initiative, which initiative needs to have in an element of surprise, because if I know what's happening, I'm ready to defend it. So this was a way that I came up with some stuff to be able to not just make sure you don't give initiative away, but at least your brain is in process, that if something was to happen, there would be more pre-contact cues that would let you know, okay,
Like
shit's about to go
warnings,
down.
almost like it's about to happen. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So
it's very
and
interesting.
but anyways, and it looks good on tape, is what I kept saying to them all. You know what? So if you stop and you pull over an 85-year-old lady, you go through these steps that I've created.
Mm-hmm.
That way, if you do 1,000 stops after that, and you
Mm-hmm.
end up having to shoot some young man, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you can say, watch, do a
Oh,
random sampling of all the things, and you'll see that I've always stopped and I've always done this exact same procedure every single time, and everybody's been fine until this time.
gotcha.
Why it wasn't. So, and then every chief of police that ever watched me do it were all saying, "This is the best thing. You should be doing this for everybody. This should be, what everybody in the state's doing." But the funny thing uh, is again, the people who are actually in charge are a
Mm.
bunch of, you know, politicians, and I fucking hate politicians,
Yeah.
and are a bunch of politicians that think that they know the best for people when they have never even done the job.
Yeah.
And so, and they don't want to do anything because they don't want to have to do the work. They
They
don't
don't
want
want
to
to
have
have their hands
to be
dirty.
involved. Right. And so they just want to wash their hands of it.
Yeah.
And then they want to point a finger at everybody else and go, no, it's not my problem, it's his. And then anytime that you go to somebody and you go, hey, you're the guy I was told to talk to about it, and they go, no, you're mixed up. You got to talk to this guy. And that's what they do in government. They go, no, that isn't what I handle. That's what that guy handles.
Yeah.
Until you go to everybody, and then you finally come back to the first guy you went to, and you go, no, the guy that was at the top told me it was you. And he goes, oh, I guess it was. And that's how it was, like, for me dealing with all these people. So
Very
and it
frustrating.
is
Do you still do that, or you kind of stop just because of the frustration and stuff?
yeah, I stopped. I actually called some mentors of mine and had some talks with them about my frustrations with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never had these talks with them before,
Okay.
and they all of them laughed while I was telling them this the whole time. I was just getting it out, and they're laughing at me, and they go, "The exact same thing happened to us. That's
Yep.
why we're not doing it." And that's I was like, okay, well, there we go. And then so I right now I'm not I still work with a handful of just individuals that
Okay.
are involved in that, but I'm not working now with the big departments because they the like I said, the bureaucrats started to say, "Oh, wait a minute, this guy fought in the UFC, so that means he's a human cockfighter, that he's and all this stuff, and that I'm teaching these guys to ground and pound and whatever." So yeah, I got out of it, and uh, again, I get pulled sometimes. Like I did Clayton PD, which is a town here. I did their SCAT, which stands for Subject Control Arrest Techniques. I did their SCAT a little while ago, but that was because they just heard about it had kind of gotten around that I had done this, and somebody, one of the guys that was a head guy over there, had been doing jujitsu for like 8 years,
Okay.
and and asked me, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this, and I said sure, and I went over, met with him, and he literally said, hey, I've done jujitsu for a little while. I'd like you to show on me because I could, he goes, uh, I've learned enough that I can smell bullshit. I know, and I didn't know what level he was of jujitsu. He just said he'd been doing jujitsu. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is a cop that's brand new at jujitsu, been
Mm-hmm.
doing jujitsu for probably 6 months and
And thinks
whatever.
he's ready a black belt.
Right. And so we got on the ground, and I just started making him scream. So I just started, submitting the guy and started doing all this stuff to him, and he was just blown away. And then after a while we talked, and he goes, "Oh no," he goes, "I've been doing jujitsu for 8 years." He goes, "I hoping to get my black belt soon." He's like, "I've competed, I've done all this stuff." So what a lot of people don't know is, like, I didn't even start doing grappling or jujitsu until I was already in the UFC. So I didn't even start until then. By the time I retired from MMA, most of my wins were from submission.
Yep.
When I left MMA, I was asked to do a tournament, and in that tournament, I ended up going through, and I ended up going with a guy that was a multiple-time world champion, and I beat him in overtime. And then a couple years later, I got talked into doing one here in North Carolina, uh, and I went against Brian Edwards, who's legit. He's 6'4", 240 pounds, and he was the only guy they had left, they said. And he's a black belt, and he's a two-time no-gi world champion, and he's won the pans. And I was told he beat Saulo Ribeiro and all that, and I finished him in 8 minutes in the first round. So I
Wow.
submitted him, and nobody thought that I was going to beat him. So you know, um, I think it comes down to, again, uh, it's not how much a lot of times. It's like the people that are most successful in life, they don't know a bunch of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but the core stuff they know, they do all the time, and they do it so much that they're so good at it. It's like a George St. Pierre. If you watch George St. Pierre, you can say this every time. He's going to throw his lead hand mostly.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to throw his lead kick. It's going to be very rare that he throws a rear kick. He's going to throw a lead Superman. He was the first guy that really started throwing lead Superman. Once you get beyond, and again, George St. Pierre's reach is 9 inches longer than mine.
Yeah.
So that's why he can use a lead hand, a lead foot, and be successful using that. Once you get beyond those, he's taking you down. And he's worked so much on that game that he looks the same all the time, that people used to say they were getting bored of watching him because they're watching the same fight every single time, and he's still winning.
Yeah.
And he stopped, he became more of a risk assessor where he was like, rather than trading or bombing or anything with these guys, I'm just going to get them on the ground and beat them up and win decisions. And that's what he did. He became the king of decisions. After he got knocked out by Matt Serra, he stopped, banging with people, and he became the king of decisions until he came back and then knocked or hurt Michael Bisping, which, you know what I mean? Which then when I saw him do that, I was like, now he's come full circle. Like he's back to, where he's shown. And what was cool is that he knocked him down with a hook, which wasn't part of his game. But I think that he had to change and adapt his game because he had a taller, bigger, longer man, which he never had to worry about because he was always the taller, longer man. He's almost 6 feet, just shy of 6 feet, but with a 76-inch reach.
His reach is ridiculous.
Right, or 77. It might be 77, but he's got a really long reach, and that's long for the welterweight division. So, mine's 69, so I'm not 70, so that's,
And the funny thing is, what you were talking about, how you said you started doing grappling once you got into the UFC and stuff, but even that, man, like you said, most of your wins were via submission and stuff. I think the nicest submission that you pulled off, it was so smooth, I think was against Paul Taylor. Do you remember the armbar? Yeah. I mean, the way that transition itself, I watched that fight a couple of days ago. I think it's on like the Ultimate Submissions. But it's just one of my favorite because it was just so smooth, and especially coming from your type of background where, again, you were a boxer first, and just seeing boxers going into MMA and stuff like that, like a Holly Holm who had a really good career in boxing. It's nice because, again, it's almost like full circle. You see them completely become a mixed martial artist. I don't know if that was the time where I felt like you were a complete mixed martial arts, regardless you were still. I felt like, okay, now he's got the ground game. Now he's got the submissions. He's complete, like he's a complete package.
Yeah, I would agree. That was about the one that let me know that because, heading into there, I was rolling and grappling with guys that grappled all the time and, and catching these guys, so I felt comfortable enough. But that was a big one in the UFC because that was the first time ever in the UFC anybody had double bonused. So I got, submission of the night and it was fight of the night because it was a really poor card, I guess, in all respects. Mm-hmm. So that was the first time that ever happened. So for a while, Dana would, say to guys, hey, you could get 2 bonuses. Marcus Davis did it. And that was how that all basically started for me. And
that's awesome. How did you who actually brought you into mixed martial? I know, again, like you said, you were a boxer, but who was the one that kind of, you kind of led and you went in with mixed martial arts? Who's the one that first got you in?
So, right, the first UFC happened in 1993, and then after I saw that, I ended up moving down to Boston, and I was real curious, and I wanted to see if that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu thing was real. So I started calling every place that had the name Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in it. And, back then, when they would say, yeah, a private's $125 an hour, you're talking 1995, which is, I was like, holy crap, that would be like, I guess, equivalent to right now saying, $200 an hour. Yeah. Right. So maybe it's $75 difference, but still I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm paying $200 an hour to roll with somebody or something that I don't even know of. Yeah. And then I finally found one that said somebody that said that they taught it was $65 an hour. And, but they were a Jeet Kune Do school and it said Rickson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And I didn't know who Rickson Gracie was. I had no idea at that time. So, I said, I'll go there. And then I went there and showing it was a guy that wasn't very physically impressive. He was short. He looked like he might've been a little overweight and everything. And I was like, oh no, man, I just got robbed. I just lost all my money. And he asked me, he said, so do you have any experience? And I said, no, I've never done anything. And I said that because I was under a boxing contract that later got dubbed a contract of slavery. But I wasn't allowed to do anything other than box. I couldn't even play basketball. I couldn't do anything.
Wow.
So unless I got permission to do so, but I really wanted to know. So I ended up doing that, and the guy just mauled me. Right, everything he tried, I tried to get out of it, and I couldn't because I had no idea what was going on. I
Mhm.
didn't understand it at all, and I was like, "Holy crap, this is real!" So that kind of was the first thing that made my eyes go, "Wow!" I've always thought that I was some great fighter, where this element, like, because I don't know, and I know for a fact, if he and I were to stand up and I not hit the ground, I would murder him.
Mhm.
But if we hit the ground, he would murder me. I mean, there would be no way. And I was a realist. I was like, even if I could bite, even if I could eye gouge, if I could do that stuff, the problem is he would still be in a dominant position to be able to do that better to me.
Definitely.
So I'm like, the last thing I'd want to do is bite him and make him go, oh wait, maybe I should
I
bite
can
him.
fight him back. Yeah.
Be on bottom, right? So it just it made me go, and I got to learn this stuff. So started playing around a little bit, but then went down a rabbit hole a bit. So then I started like studying other stuff, like a lot of the Filipino martial arts, like Panatukan and Dumog, and some of the like Silat stuff and all that, and trying to figure it out. And I didn't do very well figuring that out back then. But long story short, I was running nightclubs, and one of the doormen of my nightclubs was Tim Sylvia. So yeah, so I had made it mandatory that all the doormen had to train with me so they could learn how to fight. So that's how it all started. So Tim started training with me on the weekends, and then I said, "Hey, would you like to do some of this MMA stuff?" And he said, "Yeah, that'd be awesome." And then we heard about the MMA was illegal; it was only legal in 13 states.
Okay.
But we found out that there was these like underground fights happening in Rhode Island, and they were doing open hand. So it was what was it? Trying to think. The one that Bass Rutten did and all that.
Oh, he did like the palm slap, like those palm
Yeah,
slaps. He just like.
I can't believe I'm not
That's
remembering
okay.
it. But anyways, it was one of those kind of things where you could open hand strike. You could open hand strike. You could kick. You could knee. You could you couldn't elbow, but you could do all the submissions.
Okay.
Um, so, anyways, we went to that, and he ended up winning it. And then we went down again a couple of times, and then the next time he went, he ended up losing the finals to an overweight version of Jorge Rivera. So Jorge Rivera went in there and then ended up beating him by guillotine.
Oh
So, which is
wow.
funny. So that's what he got. And that was before Jorge and everybody, like, we were all just trying to figure what this all was out, what it was. So then time goes by, and then went to a UFC in New Jersey, and there was Pat Miletich, and Pat Miletich said to Tim, hey, do you train? And he's like, yeah. He goes, I'm actually fighting. Oh, Pancrase. He was doing.
Right. Oh yeah, back in Japan.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
he was going. I'm doing Pancrase and stuff and whatever. And he said, well, if you come out here, we'd love to use you because we have a guy that I think it was Ben Rothwell at that time was going to have a fight against somebody who was like Tim's size. So Tim flew out there, started training with him, and he called me and said, hey, man, I'm not coming back to work. He goes, I'm going to stay here and keep training and fighting. And I said, hey, man, make some room for me because I'm going to come out there too. So then I flew out there and trained with them, and then tried out basically because back then they still had kind of the trying out for the teams.
Okay.
And at that time, I had 4 fights at heavyweight, and I'd won all 4 in the first round by knockout. And because nobody could fight at all at that time, like it was pretty even me as a heavyweight with the reach that I had. But I was like 225 pounds. I'll send you pictures. I look like a freak, but I was 225 pounds with 8% body fat, so I looked like a madman. And but I was just knocking everybody out. And then Pat said, "Yeah, absolutely." So I cut all that weight, and I've had one fight at 85, and then I fought at 70. And Pat flew out for that, and then I started fighting for Miletich at first. And then when I got on the show, which was shortly after that, the first Ultimate Fighter,
Yep.
the last fight that I had before that, I had one fight at 155 for a title for it's the one that now a Combat Zone in New England. What's his name owns it? From the UFC. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank.
It's all right. I am too. You kind of put me on this. I'm trying to think right now. Okay, there's
Calvin Cater. Calvin Cater owns the organization now. So before he bought it, there was this other guy that owned it, and I fought for him, and I fought a Russian by the name of what was his name? Mezabekov. His last name was Mezabekov. I can't remember his name, first name. Goosey. I think it was Goosey Mezabekov or something like that. But anyways, I beat him and won that title. And then that's right after that, I got on the show, and that was at 170 for that. And Matt Hughes and
Rich Franklin, right?
Franklin coaches. And George Gurgel ended up, him and I became best friends on that. And I got along a lot better, I would say, personality-wise, with a guy like Rich Franklin than a guy like Matt Hughes. So, I'm not going to get into all that. But so I was glad I ended up with that. So I ended up kind of segueing out of that Team Miletich. I started training with George for a while, but because he was in Ohio, I couldn't do a lot of traveling. And I knew of Mark Delagrati, so then I started training with Delagrati, and then that became basically like my home team. So
Gotcha.
Mark Delagrati took over all my training, and we went from there.
That's awesome. Again, like I said, you had a stellar career, man, in the UFC. You lasted a while and stuff. And one of my favorite fights of yours, just because you're two fan favorites, and two of my favorites was Chris Lytle, who was also a boxer before going into UFC, and then you. So you had two boxers going at it, and it's one of those fights where you don't want to see it, but you really do, because it's two of your favorite fighters. Like, damn, one of them unfortunately has to lose and stuff like that. But I'm just glad. I mean, it was a good fight and stuff. So that was one of my favorite fights of yours. That, and again, like I said, the armbar was something that was awesome to see for me.
Chris is an incredible human being. Like, he's just
He's
the
really
best
nice
guy.
guy. He really is.
I just saw him 2 weeks ago. So one of the fighters that I trained, he's originally from Ohio. He's an NCAA champ wrestler, All-American. He fought that night out there against the kid that had just come off the Contender Series.
Okay.
Beat the kid that night, but Chris Lytle was the commentator for it.
Yep.
So right when I came in, we were like, "Hey, what's up, man?" But yeah, man, he's just an awesome guy.
He really is.
Everybody I've met in MMA, he's definitely one of the top best guys.
Yeah,
so
he's just a really, really good guy, man. I had him on the show and we were talking stuff, and he was telling me how his when he did bare knuckle, he was like, it's like boxing, but just elevated times like 100. Now, you ever thought about doing that? I'm just throwing out there. I mean, I know you're retired, but was there always, when you saw that, was there something that interested you and you're like,
not really, because I had, I got interested in MMA more so because it was closer to a real combat situation.
Okay.
Like, without us being able to bite and eye gouge and headbutt and stuff, it's as close as you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Where bare knuckle fighting isn't. Just because you don't have any gloves on, you're limited at your tools.
Gotcha.
So I really wasn't interested in that. I'd been in enough bare knuckle fights, basically. You know what I mean? Before
Yeah,
we knew that there was grappling, nobody was wrestling. Everybody was
definitely.
bare knuckle fighting. And
Yeah.
I was in high school in the '80s, so that wasn't when there were a bunch of friggin' pussies running around, and like parents weren't even letting kids play. Kids now, kids can't even play King of the Hill because they're afraid their kids are. And we used to play when we play King of the Hill. We're friggin' flying, side kicking, and kicking kids off a mountain and punching them, and giving them body shots and then
Uh,
side kicking them down the hill. That's how we did it. And it was a different time. We had rock fights. I mean,
yeah.
imagine having a rock. Like if you throw a rock at somebody now, they'd want to put that kid in prison. And we had
First of all,
we
you'll
had
be
rock fights.
filmed. You'll be
We
filmed
had rock
first.
fights for fun. Like it was to have fun.
Yeah.
And and if you got hit with a rock, if you threw a rock at a kid and you hit him hard enough that you dropped him or he started crying, if you went and you checked on that kid and you said, "Dude, are you all right?" He would look at you and go, "What are you, a pussy? Of course I'm fine." Or it was
Yeah.
was how it was back then. And now it's completely different. Now it's
Yeah.
so
It's
yeah.
different. It's different times, man. Especially nowadays.
Yeah. So when people tell me that the bare knuckle fighting stuff is like, the closest that you're going to get to a real fight, I just go, you have you've never been in a real fight.
Yeah.
That's it. If you think it is, but yeah, no. When I saw Chris, that was the first thing I said to him. I go, "You're a madman. Why would you even do that, especially at your age?" Because he's only a few years younger than I am. I think
Mhm.
he might be like 5 years younger than I am. So
Mhm.
he's got to be 40, which I'm 47. So I think he's like 42.
Yeah, he's somewhere up there, but yeah,
Yeah.
he's
So I'm like, what are you doing at friggin' 40 years old? You punching men with your bare hand after you've already had like another 100 fights before that, MMA and boxing and all that stuff. And yeah, but he was like, yeah, man, I just wanted to do it. He goes, and I did it. I think he did it 3 times, he said.
and he said he
And
was done. Yep.
done. Yeah, yeah. And I said, yeah, good for you.
Yeah, but again, you never it's that's one thing that's a beauty behind mixed martial arts is that some people that you fight they end up becoming your best friends and stuff, or you just get that really close bond, which is really
All
really
my
cool.
all my sparring partners growing up were my best friends.
There you go.
Right. So I was punching the people who
The
I was
close.
closest with all the time. My best friend all the way, up until, he passed, but he was my best friend all the way up until then. Every day every single day we punched each other. And it was because that's what we wanted to do. And we were the only two that knew each other that could take it. Like
Yep.
there were no other kids that were interested in getting beaten up.
Yeah.
So, we would get together and we would just savagely beat each other all the time. And we, then we would go out and we would do it to other people on the street. We did it to each other. We used each other as practice. And
Gotcha.
then we'd go out and we would actually do this. And his name was Sean Darby. So another Irish kid. And the sad thing is like when I fought, when I had that fight on the Ultimate Fighter, um, the I looked in the audience when I was doing that, and Tim Sylvia was there. So you don't, maybe you do see it on there. I don't remember, but Tim Sylvia was there, and Tim Sylvia was there because they brought him in or let him come in to tell me that Sean had died.
Oh,
So that day that I had fought, and had that horrible experience there, same thing. I found out that he had died at that time. So, and he had, again, was he was a big part of all of my training when I was younger. And his older brother became one of my coaches for a while because his older brother had boxed in the military, and so that was a big shocker that. And what's kind of sucks is because how the way TV is, it's all bullshit.
definitely.
Was after I lost that fight, I was like, man, that sucks. I didn't want to lose that fight and everything, but it let me know, especially being on that show, how I had to learn how to grapple. That I had to learn more of the jujitsu stuff of it. But
Mhm.
what they do at the end of it, it cuts from that to me saying goodbye and I'm crying, right? I'm saying bye and I'm crying. and it makes it look like I'm crying because I'm saying goodbye and I lost the fight. I'm crying still because they brought Tim in the back room and Tim told me that my best friend had died.
And then they just made it seem like.
And then when they shoot it, they don't show that. They don't tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And they also don't tell the story that I almost died on that show.
Oh.
So on that show, I got MRSA in my face and in my foot because of them, because they weren't cleaning the mats correctly.
Okay.
And then ended up finding out not on our season, because the next season everybody broke out with a skin infection and they had to shut production down for a while.
Oh,
and
wow.
Mark Delagrade, which is funny, it was him, ended up figuring out what the problem was. But yeah, and then even though I had that, it had eaten through my face and was almost in my ear and everything, the doctor had told the person that was with me at the hospital from Spike, said, you know what, if he had won this fight and you brought him back to the house, he may not have lived throughout the night. He might have died. Wow. And so after that, I ended up in a quarantine house, and they had all I did for like 3 days is have those cold sweats, and I was shaking. I thought I was going to die. I mean, it was horrible. And then after I came out of it, the Spike TV people came in and said to me, hey, there might be a way to get you back on the show as an alternate because somebody else might be hurt. Right? After they thought I was going to die, and now they want to put me back on the show.
Hey, you're not dead yet, so can we use you just a
heartbeat?
Ain't that I mean, things that happen behind closed doors, man.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I wanted. That's why one of the beauty about having my podcast, because I had Mark Hunt, and he can't stand the UFC. I mean, for his own reasons, but I think I let him rant. I think we went on for an hour, and I think 45 to 50 minutes, it was just him tearing the UFC a new asshole. I mean, I let him. I mean, hey, you know, that's why I'm here for. But
you can see why. You know, I have a bittersweet kind of relationship with them, because they did treat me really, really well at first, and Dana was really good to me at first. But the way that, you know, I ended up exiting the UFC was pretty much bullshit. But and because I had so many people in the back offices that really liked me, because whenever I did a show, and still, like when I go to there to work people's corners and stuff, I don't spend my time with fighters. I spend my time with the people that work the show. Okay. So I'm friends with the people that were behind the scenes. So I used to be friends with a lot of them. And then when they sold the company, you know, they told all those people, don't worry, you're still going to have your jobs. And then they fired them all shortly after. So I was friends with a lot of those people. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of time with them. And then they told me when UFC cut me, they ended up telling me this is how that went down. And it was total bullshit. So, you know, and to think, and what really pissed me off is that I had lost 2 fights, and then they cut me. Where at that time, you know, my bitter rival, Dan Hardy, had lost 4.
And they kept him
in a row, and they kept him. And so I was like, you know, that really made me angry. So
I don't really. I mean, he's still working for the UFC. I don't really care for him as much. I remember, and I believe
since then.
And I
talked to him about a year ago.
Really?
And just said, you know, hey man, you know, it happens. It's all over, you know, and you know, I hope you the best of luck, because I knew that, you know, he had that heart issue, that what they call Wolf's heart issue, and just said, you know, that sucks. I said I wouldn't want you to not be able to compete because of that, right? I would much rather sit in a chair and watch him get throttled again. And then to think he can't. But you have no idea what the greatest, for me, the greatest fight to watch and just be like, thank you, Chris, was when Chris Lytle fought him and then finished him in the last round by submission.
And then retires.
Which was just justified, because I was like, thank you, and I just sat there.
Yeah, that's the day he retired too. It was nice, especially you want to go off like retirement, with the W, with your, like Chris said, riding in the sunset, and that was the best way, especially putting Dan Hardy. I mean, again, I don't really care for him. I don't care for him commentating. My ears bleed when he talks, but hey, it is what it is. But I think you won that match. Obviously, if it was in another place, uh,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like a lot of people will say, oh, they didn't, but CompuBox, the one that tried back then, used to track all the strikes and everything. They had me winning by a long shot, because you got to look at when we were on the ground. The only thing he ever did was got into my guard.
Yep.
He never passed my guard. I not only got into his guard, passed his guard, I had side mount. I took his back and had my hooks in, and I fully mounted him. So I did everything possible on the ground, and I had submission attempts. He had 0.
Yeah.
And then I had more takedowns. And even though he dropped me with a knee, I dropped him twice with shots.
Yeah.
So, the statistically on paper, but and another thing, if anybody that watches that fight again, watch it with the sound turned off. Don't watch it with Joe Rogan commentating. And Joe Rogan and I are buddies and everything, but Dan Hardy had just finished his camp with Joe Rogan at Eddie Bravo's. So Eddie Bravo was his coach for that. So
your buddy.
that's why it's like, oh yeah, hey. So just
I'm gonna watch that. I'm gonna watch that fight and mute it. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that later on.
You don't hear Joe talk every time Dan does something. Joe like makes it, oh, there that is, But when I'm doing something, he'll go, oh, it's, Mark's getting better position, So Dan could be in trouble here. He's just got to do, But when Dan's going, he's like, oh, look at that, yeah, right, So, anyways, and that changed my career because he went on after that to be able to fight George St. Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so that one fight changed everything after that, So, anyways.
Well, again, Marcus, it's been a pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing, man. I know a lot of fans, me, myself, I love watching you back in the day, and I just want to say anything that you do throughout your whole career now, whatever you do, just God bless you, man. Thank you so much for the time spent, man. It's been an honor to watch
You're
you.
a great guy, man. Yeah, you're a great guy. You got a gift. Keep going with it, man. And Alex, I appreciate you just reaching out to me. Helps keep an old man relevant a little bit. Lets people know I'm still alive. That I haven't. Where are they now?
Hey,
by Alex, digging us up and giving us CPR, making us alive again. But no, I appreciate it.
No problem, man. And again, we appreciate you, and don't ever think that you're not that you're alone, man. We have a bunch of people that support you and love what you do and what you're still doing for the community, man. So, God bless you, Mr. Davis. All right.